behold, for it is I. Gib? I know not of any Gib. State your purpose. Choose your words wisely. We deal harshly with those who would disturb the peace. Pray, I am but a humble reviewer. Behold, my trunk full of books. I have come to tell of the Dragon's Lance, and perhaps your people may choose to read them, or scoff and choose to ignore them entirely. Kill him. Take the books. Oh dear, Paladine, not again. Hello everybody, thanks for joining me today, for truly it is I, Gib, the man that doth lug around a trunk stuffed fat with book. And it's no mystery that I love D&D. I love tabletop RPGs, and today I wanted to do some special reviews of some books that kind of paved the path for me to get into that in the first place. So before we go into that, the reason I'm picking these books too is with the return of Dragonlance to D&D 5th edition, with both Fizban's Treasury of Dragons and Dragonlance Shadow of a Dark Queen. With that in mind, I want to review the original trilogy, as well as with the return of the original authors, the beginning of the new trilogy. The second book of which is out September, coming up real shortly here. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, buckle in folks, this one's gonna be a ride. So the legend begins many moons ago. Jesus Christ, where does the time go, you guys? When I was about 13 years old, 8th grade, Mr. Groff's class. Now, back then 9/11 had just happened. I was in Mr. Groff's class when it happened. We were watching it on the news. So we had probably gotten the biggest dose of reality a 13-year-old could possibly get at that point. And when we were given these reading lists for some kind of year-long reading assignment, I don't even recall if we had to do book reports for it or if it was just some kind of reading requirement that he had to get done. Well, anyway, he had this curated list. Now, I had been devouring reading lists, devouring books since elementary school, to the point where I was tired of getting golds at our reading Olympics and intentionally took a dive twice so that I could get a silver and a bronze to complete the set. So believe me when I say that when I got this reading list, my greedy hands snatched that up like a menu at your favorite sit-down restaurant. I'm checking out these books, and to this day, I don't even recall what the other titles were on this list. All I remember is that me and my friends got together in like some kind of council, and we decided we were going to read the same books. I also don't recall why we chose Dragonlance. Maybe it was just the coolest title on the list. Maybe after that hard hit of reality, we were just ready to spend some time escaping to a fantasy world. Either way, we all were going to read this together. It was pretty amazing. I remember starting to read it, and the whole thing takes place in a world called Kryn. And they really kind of just drop you in it. And that's the first time I had really seen so much of that as well. Most of the books I had read up until then were mystery or horror, typically taking place in present day, unless it was some kind of like you remember those great illustrated fiction novels where they like redid classic literary novels like Frankenstein, Huckleberry Finn, but they would like take out the questionable things and like narrow them down to like 100 pages or less with some sweet little illustrations in them. Anyway, I'm getting off point. I had never really read a fantasy book, not full on like that before, not one that was I thought it was meant for adults, but yeah, I've come back to these books like over and over throughout the years, and I would say I probably hit these books at exactly the right age. So what was going on was that there was a group of old friends getting back together, and there were rumors of war. And that's how these books kind of start out. Now, starts out with Autumn Twilight, then it moves on to Winter Night, and then Spring Dawning finishes up the War of the Lance. Now, because I don't want to get into any spoilers, all I'll say is that actually, that's probably too much. I'm gonna have to cut that out. It was really cool to me. I had never really come into contact with like D&D classes. I had no knowledge about D&D. I didn't really play any like RPG video games. So coming into contact with these like cliche classes, these like really at this point kind of played out like character profiles, like it was completely new for me. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought there was a lot of relationship stuff that I really would get annoyed at for these characters. Like, oh, why don't they just learn their lessons? And why don't they, like, why aren't they nicer to each other? Stuff like that. You might feel that way too if you end up reading it, but the whole fantasy element, the escapism of it, the like quote unquote hard emotional choices that a lot of these characters have to go through, like, man, I just couldn't wait to see what happened next throughout the entire books. Me and my friend Mike ended up reading like every single book in the main series, which I don't know, at this point might be like 12, 15 books, maybe more. So a lot of stuff happens, which is probably why with these new trilogies it's kind of cool that they make them accessible. Like, they do reference a lot of stuff that fans would instantly recognize, and that makes it pretty neat for me and people who have probably read a lot of Dragonlance in the past. But I also have a theory about these ones that I'll get to a little bit later. But in the meantime, for my actual review of these, I would say, yeah, if you're reading a lot of like maybe YA fiction, this is right up your alley. If you're not too over if you're not too over like classic like D&D like tropes, then right up your alley. If that's something that you could really do without, like maybe you won't like it too much. You'll probably end up getting bored with it. But like, to me, these characters are legends now. Like, I was sitting there on Solasta. If you guys ever played that, it's kind of like a game loosely based off of D&D 5e on computer. But I was sitting there. I made every single hero of the Lance. You know, we got the Ranger kind of class, like Tanis Half-Elven, right? We got like the Rogue class, Tasselhoff Burrfoot. We got a fighter, like warrior, Flint Fireforge. We got a knight, Stern Brightblade. We got a barbarian, Riverwind. We got a healer, Goldmoon. We've got a warrior, fighter. Dang, I guess there's kind of two of them, right? But that's the human mercenary, Caramon Majir. His twin, Ultra Wizard, Edgelord, Raceland Majir. Raceland? Anyway, yeah, it's kind of weird how you don't say a whole lot of things out loud when you're reading them, and then when you go to try to pronounce them, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, how the heck is that pronounced after all? Anyway, I'm sure you run into that all the time too. But these people are just legends to me now. And getting back over to here, quick side note that there is just a very nice map in here of the continent of Ansalon, which is where the story takes place. And yeah, one of the nicer maps I think I've ever seen in a fantasy book. Very cool to hear. I think these ones, they've had kind of decades worth of experience now. I would say this one is written a little bit better than the old school ones were, even though, like, okay, so nostalgia factor, like freaking 10 out of 10. But without that going for it, if you're not tired of fantasy, if you want to kind of experience some 80s like high fantasy, like coming in as if you don't really know what all these classes are about, um, I'd say 7, 8. And if you're kind of over that stuff, then like don't even read it. You're not gonna enjoy it. I promise you. Um, so for fans of this saga, definitely read this. Freaking Mike, I'm looking at you. I'm still waiting on you to read this. I would love to talk about it with you. Um, yeah, it's got some really cool callbacks. It's got a brand new character. It intertwines her with some of the events that happened in the past. Kind of tells like why we've never heard of this girl before, and she's just so naive in this world and has to learn some hard lessons. And as an only child, like I kind of appreciate that. Like I have a lot of family and stuff, but you know when you're the only kid that your parents have to look out for, like you don't get away with anything and you get sheltered from a lot of stuff. So like, I had to learn some hard lessons like later on in life. Um, and that's kind of what happens with this girl here, in my opinion. And it also takes some turns that I didn't really see coming, which is like kind of the opposite of what happens in the old trilogy. Like especially as an adult, you really see like the twists like coming from a mile away, but it still feels good when they get there, and you kind of like pat yourself on the back like, ha, I knew it. But with this new one, yeah, it went some directions that I was like, whoa, okay. Okay, I usually don't like to do spoilers. I say usually, like I've done a bunch of these videos, but I don't intend on doing spoilers for the most part. So because I said I was going to talk about this theory, be warned right now, there's a little bit of spoilers here. So fast forward to this. I'll put the timestamp right here, and I'll see you on the other side of it. For those of you who have read this book, my theory is that they're using this to restart the Dragonlance universe, because when Margaret and Tracy stepped away from it in like 1995, because it had originally been TSR and then eventually it was bought out by Wizards of the Coast. Well, they weren't really interested in doing the stories that were happening in 1995, so they just got somebody else to do it. Somebody who wasn't one of the original people, who treated all the characters completely differently. Like, no shade on Gene Rabe, perfectly good author, but like was kind of thrown into this task and like given a time limit to get this stuff done. But yeah, it completely took it in a different direction with like alien dragons and like Kender, who apparently are afraid or not Kender at all, really. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I skipped those books. Sorry, Gene. um but when they came back, Margaret and Tracy, they had to deal with the fallout from that and bring it back into a place where they wanted to go. So they came up with a convincing storyline that would basically pull it all together, where like, oh, like this all happened because their world was brought to like a different universe, stolen away from one of the dark gods, which is why none of the gods were in it. And came up with this whole storyline where the gods have left. What's going on? They left again, right? um so my thoughts here is that they popped her back in time with the intent of like a kind of like a DC style like reboot, like Flashpoint of Dragonlance, and they're gonna rewrite over what maybe would have happened if they hadn't left in 1995, and if some important things had gone a different way. That's how I think it's gonna go down. Anyway, because this is kind of spoiler area, I am gonna please ask that we don't talk about that too much in the comments unless uh, I don't think there's a way to do like spoilers like you can on Reddit. I don't know. If you can do that, then it's fine. But if not, like kind of save it for other people so that they don't get anything spoiled. Thank you so much. On with the review. Whoa, okay. And I am ready for the next one coming up. So with this one, I'd probably give it a solid 8. With if they kind of are able to continue it in a way that some of the themes really come around and get tied up well, like it might even feel better after that too. But yeah, this is not like your George R.R. Martin fantasy. This is not like Robert Jordan Wheel of Time fantasy. Not Steven Erickson. It is your Forgotten Realms, R.A. Salvatore, your like pulpy, like Indiana Jones swashbuckling every once in a while fantasy version. So I don't know. You might be the kind of reader who enjoys this. You might be the kind of reader who is like, stay away. Check out the Goodreads. I've actually seen some pretty valid stuff, but even with that, it's rated really high, and that can't be 100% for nostalgia. So give it a go. Let me know if you end up reading it. Let me know if you're a fan. Let me know if you end up reading the new ones. And maybe we'll get to do a book club on that later if anybody's interested on it. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Until next time, take care of yourselves.